Helldivers 2 PlayStation almost nuked its biggest PC game ever. What is this?
We should probably get into this. When we started planning for this,
Oh, this is IGN.
The headline was that Sony has a major hit on their hands because the biggest, I think, what we got the sales numbers for Helldivers 2.
I've seen it.
Officially, like the best-selling.
Yeah, we checked it out.
It is, according to
It looks all right.
Over at the thing that used to be, what's it called? It's they do the sales charts things.
Used to be MPD, now it's
Circana. Yeah, we're doing a good job here. So yeah, no. He said PC has been a huge part of the success of Helldivers 2 in the US. With PC, Helldivers 2 has already the 7th highest grossing Sony published game in history. Without PC, it wouldn't currently rank among the top 20, which is utterly mind-boggling. Sony has a bona fide, quantifiable hit on their hands with Helldivers 2. It's huge. It's massive. It's one of the biggest games of the year. It came out of nowhere. I don't think anyone was expecting this. It's massive. It's got a wondrful, active community. It's great. What could possibly go wrong to disrupt that in any capacity? And if you answered, mandatory PSN linking for PC accounts, you would be correct, because between when we had our first little meeting being like, jeepers, what should we talk about next week? There sure isn't much in the way of news. This dropped, and Sony put out a big announcement basically being like, hey, if you have a PC account, you're playing on PC, as by the end of the month, all accounts to play online, they will have to pair a PSN account with their Steam account so that they can something
really
in security and
is that a thing?
Management, something. They didn't really give a very stable reason for doing this, and the fact that people have been playing this game for 3 months without it being linked kind of pokes any holes in the fact that this is like an urgent, necessary fix. The big issue with this is that PSN
what
is
this
available.
This is, I guess,
like 170
IGN's talking about Helldivers 2.
Yeah. So just an amazing.
More importantly, they're talking about linking your PlayStation account to your Steam account when it comes down to
what was really
playing Sony-owned games,
obviously,
which I think is weird.
The players almost immediately assumed that this was a decision from the developer at Arrowhead, and it was not. Like this is sometimes your parent company says like, "Hey, this is what you have to do today," and you're like, no, and everyone went in and review bombed Helldivers 2 and Helldivers 1 and pretty much anything else associated with the studio ever. And it's like,
didn't think it was a big deal.
It's a bummer.
Annoying, sure.
Because there isn't
yeah.
really like
well, I mean, it's just weird. It's not like I don't think it's a big deal.
We're frustrated, but it wasn't.
Sony took their decision back to the back, so this is pointless. So you don't have to do this
and leave a negative review for their headquarters or whatever.
Like it has been bombed on Steam. What's the score?
Is sort of disembodied from these decisions, although they're the ones making
them. From a 9 to a 7.
But yeah, the fact that they held up this thing as like a sort of like, a security measure.
Certain regions can't link, so they would lose access to the game
for a long time, or playing PlayStation.
And they didn't think of that at all when they came out with that announcement.
I've known that PlayStation is like the most notoriously hacked.
They also didn't know PSN wasn't available worldwide, so it's whatever.
More. Like one of the when PSN,
it's their company. They should know that.
First came out when there was that email about the Mario movie, and like they were working on
accident.
That like one of the CEOs was like, "Oh, put some EDM in it," because
fire whoever made that decision.
Like there was. Then there was.
You don't come out with an announcement like that, and you don't know your company.
So for them to be like, "This is a big security concern," and then 3 days later being like, "We've heard you, and it's actually not that much of a big security concern, so don't worry about it." But like the damage is already done. Helldivers 2 got review bombed. Helldivers 1 got review bombed. Yeah. Like people are pissed off about this.
Yeah, a lot of those review bombs were because of this stance that this whole implementation, and the fact that I think that the fact that PlayStation walked it back. I'm hopefully people go back and they kind of change their reviews, because that was the motivating factor for like the negative review bombs, is because like hey, I can't play this game in my region because I can't sign up for a PSN account. And the fact that even the CEO,
they already changed the reviews.
He actually,
some of them probably did, but there's a few that I'm sure did.
He wanted to make sure that people knew that no, look, this wasn't our decision. This was something that PlayStation they wanted to do when the game first launched, but I think it was like server issues, and so they couldn't. And so, I don't know why they didn't use those 3 months to kind of assess the regions that this
Right.
game is released
Thank
in
you.
currently, and the fact that
Yeah.
like I believe in like the well, I'll just say some countries.
Dude, me and
you need to
Akeem, we're
own
on like the
PS4
same
or
page,
PS5
bro.
in order to even sign up for a PSN account. So
which is super frustrating. And it's
Yeah.
like that actually, I mean, that was interesting because that opened up a bigger conversation where it was just like,
Why was it
there's,
mostly
like,
negative before?
150 plus countries where you can't access PSN,
right,
like
Yeah.
period. And I'm like, that's a problem for like a major global brand, right? That's
yeah,
like,
exactly.
Yeah.
that was crazy to me. So it's like
And
that
the fact
yeah,
that they had 3 months to think about this,
I
Right.
know.
and they still decided to roll this. They still decided to
say
double
it.
down on this decision. Like, yeah, let's do this. This thing,
Yeah.
3 months ago.
So they actually had more time than
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Johan Palstedt, who's the CEO of Arrowhead and who's been kind of refreshingly transparent and open throughout this whole thing. I mean, he basically posted like, "Hey, this wasn't our call. If you have any complaints, here's the link to the official PlayStation customer support." No, somebody called him out for being like, "This, you're not completely blameless here," and he said, "No, that's true. I'm not. We did know about this. It was my decision to make it so that this wasn't a requirement at launch because I wanted people to be able to play the game." And he goes on to say that they knew 6 months prior to launch that this was going to be a requirement for Sony online games. So it wasn't a
Okay.
surprise. I'm guessing that some people internally probably spoke up against this and said, this might not be a great idea. You know, I would assume that if removing this feature made it easier to
I
launch,
can't. I don't have a PlayStation.
perhaps that is something that impedes.
I know everybody
games
wants me to
itself.
play
It's just
Stellar
something that
Blade.
they
I
might
do
have
not have a
Yeah, he
PlayStation.
said basically they were guilty of not emphasizing enough that this would be the case down the road. And I mean, had they at launch been like, you need a PSN account to sign into this game, period,
It wouldn't
it
have
would
done
not be as it would not have
successful.
sold as well.
Yeah, you're absolutely
Flat out,
right.
a lot of people would have either been mad at it or they would have just moved on and not
You're
even bothered buying it in the
absolutely
first place.
100%
But also,
correct.
like, yeah.
So that's why they didn't bring it up.
When the game is
Just
like,
borrow one
getting
from
a
Best
peak
Buy.
concurrence
Steal
regularly,
one?
and it's in popularity.
I'm not
and stuff
doing
like
either
that,
of those
and
things.
It's like, it's so short-sighted and stupid. And like, yes, let's be like totally honest here. It's not the worst thing in the world. Like, I'm not going to side with Sony on this one, but like,
Yeah.
it's just like it's an extra hurdle to hop
Yeah,
over,
that's
right?
all
But
it
not
is.
like they're
It's
like,
not.
it's
just mildly annoying.
for PSN.
It's what the cool people do now.
But on the PC gaming
Okay,
side,
jokes,
like,
Twitch,
that's just
JK.
a thing that people don't really want to put up with. They don't want to put up with like extra launches,
No criminal activity.
logins, and blah, blah, blah,
Period.
blah, blah, blah. It's unnecessary. You're already going through Steam, accessing the game, and
I'm not cool.
And you're playing it.
I'm a Debbie Downer.
You play all of your games, and like, there's just like a level of like understanding that a lot of developers have on the PC gaming side.
I'm like
Whether
Chucky
don't
from
mess with the audience
Rugrats.
there. And Sony's official.
I don't think it's a good idea, Tommy.
We're still kind of reading the room on PC gaming. We're still trying to figure it out. And then we just found out a few days later, like, Ghost of Tsushima is coming.
I
to PC,
invented
and for
swag.
multiplayer, you will need a PSN.
Also
So it's like
untrue.
they're still kind of shooting themselves in the foot on some of this stuff, and I don't know. Like, it feels like they want to work in
That's-
world.
I can see that.
Like, successful on console and on PC at the same time on the same day. Like, they're gonna have to figure out that rules are different across those.
That is not what.
Like, on the console side, you're in a walled garden, and you're kind of like, hey, you can't do anything without our say, right? Like, you have to pay to go online. You have to, you have to be to play with you need a PSN account on your PS5. That's sort of just like baked in. That's part of it. But on
Right.
PC, like, people don't want to deal with like 600 different logins for
For real, dog.
just wanna be
For
able to jump in
real.
and start playing
He
and
is
play it out,
absolutely
play something
right.
else. And so, like, they're gonna have to figure this out. And I'm glad they backtracked on this. It was stupid that it happened to begin with, because it was sort of like, you guys have this, like, you're like, the way you set up the story, Max, like, this is an incredibly successful game, almost largely because of PC. Like, the console's doing a lot of heavy lifting too, but the PC side is like, why one of the big reasons this game is what it is right now. And like, when we're talking about like the biggest games of this year at the end of this year and the game of the year and all that, like,
Do you
Helldivers
think
2 is a
Helldivers
conversation.
2
A big part of that
will
is
get
because
Game of the Year?
community.
There's no way,
So,
right?
to, like, mess with that and like, poke that bear is just
Yeah.
extremely stupid. And so I really hope that they figure out what to do.
I don't think it will.
Titles, because they're gonna launch future titles day and date, whether or not they say they are right now.
I don't think it will.
They're looking at analytics right now and metrics, and they're saying like, dude, we got to do this. Like, this has to be the thing that we do, for at least specifically for something that has a multiplayer component to it.
But they're also like, we don't have enough analytics. What if we had people's PSN analytics? Let's make them all sign up for PSN.
Exactly.
No, they're also just a live service game. There are so many of them. It's such a completely, brutal marketplace right now. You're competing for people's time and their money. I mean, in the
After
case
this,
of
probably not. Almost.
It would have had, to fight to do its own thing were it free to play. And the fact that it's a game you have to pay for, a premium game, like that's on its own, that's a hurdle on its own to get people to shell out actual money to buy a game to mess around with, which entirely hinges on there being a multiplayer ecosystem to engage with.
Right.
If no one's playing, you're not going to play. That's just kind of how it is.
Exactly.
Like a multiplayer game doesn't.
Yeah, live service games.
And
if you don't have people playing,
multiple people to spend money on the product is, again, one more hurdle. And then asking them to sign up for a thing to log into, another hurdle. You don't want to have that many things in their way if you're trying to get them to actually play the game.
Yeah, I mean, he's absolutely right. I almost didn't install Diablo 4 just because it's on Battle.net, and I did not want Battle.net on my computer. So I understand completely. But yeah, no, that was good. I mean, I'm glad that Helldivers 2 is back to normal and they're not making everybody log in with PSN accounts. It's kind of weird that they would do that, but I do understand it from a marketing standpoint. They wanted to make sure they got all the analytics of all the players and the concurrent player bases of the game because technically it's property owned by Sony. So I get it. At the same time, don't release it to where nobody has to log in and then after the fact, 3 months later, try and make everybody do it, even in places that can't do it. That's crazy talk. And they need to fire whoever that was that said, this is a good idea. Fire that person. That's my little thing on that.